The call of the wild pushes many to seek adventure, but it doesn't always end in triumph. In this video, we'll uncover 5 more real stories of outdoor adventures that turned into nightmares, harrowing tales of survival attempts that ended in the most tragic ways. It was August 1st, 1998, in Lake Kariba, Zimbabwe. David Playdell Bouverie, a 19-year-old British man, was working as an assistant on a photographic safari in Zimbabwe's Matusadona National Park. David, who was taking a gap year before starting university, was excited to experience the African wilderness. However, this night would tragically become his last. David was camping with a group of tourists and safari staff. Safety rules required tents to remain zipped to prevent wild animals from entering, but David left his tent open that night, a decision that would prove fatal. Around 1:30 a.m., the camp was shaken by a scream. A lion had entered David's tent, and in a panic he ran into the surrounding bush. Unbeknownst to him, this act of fleeing triggered a deadly response from a pride of lions in the area. Bradley Fouche, a safari guide, was woken by the commotion. From his tent, he saw David running in the moonlight, chased by lions. Armed with a handgun and flashlight, Fouche tried to intervene, but the situation unfolded too quickly. The lions, led by an injured and starving lioness, surrounded David. Despite efforts to scare them away with flares and loud noises, the pride didn't retreat in time. David was attacked, dragged into the bushes, and overpowered by the predators. The staff eventually managed to drive the lions off and searched for David. When his body was recovered, it was clear the injuries were devastating. Parts of his clothing and remains were later found in the stomachs of 2 lions, which were tracked down and euthanized. The incident was a result of multiple factors. The injured lioness, unable to hunt properly, was desperate for food. The unzipped tent provided easy access, and David's attempt to flee triggered the lion's instinct to chase. Despite following safety protocols, the safari team was unable to prevent the tragedy. Fouche, who acted as quickly as he could, was deeply affected, as were the other staff and tourists. The safari company, Ivan Carter Safaris, described the event as a rare and tragic accident. Although the company had operated for years without a similar incident, the death of a guest underscored the unpredictable nature of the wild. The guidelines, keeping tents zipped and staying inside unless directed by guides, were in place for a reason. Unfortunately, David's oversight led to devastating consequences. David had been set to begin a history degree at the University of Newcastle. He was passionate about travel and the outdoors, and his family described him as a promising young man with a bright future. His death left them heartbroken. David had also been in line to inherit his family's 2,000-acre estate in Hertfordshire. His father, the High Sheriff of Hertfordshire, called the loss unbearable. The lions involved were later hunted and euthanized. The injured lioness, believed to have initiated the attack, was among them. While lions rarely target humans, hunger and injury can drive them to act against their usual instincts. This tragic encounter showed the dangers of interacting with wildlife, even under controlled conditions. David's death raised questions about safari safety. Should stricter rules have been in place regarding tent use? Could the guides have been better prepared for emergencies? Although the staff followed protocols, this event revealed the limits of even the most carefully planned precautions in the unpredictable wilderness. For those on the safari and David's loved ones, the tragedy left lasting scars. The wild beauty of Africa, which had drawn David to Zimbabwe, also became the setting for his untimely death, a painful reminder of the risks that come with venturing into nature's domain. It was April 28, 2000, when 22-year-old Yuri Lipsky, an experienced Israeli-Russian diving instructor, set out for what would tragically become his final dive. He had traveled to Dahab, Egypt, specifically to dive into the Blue Hole, a world-famous yet highly dangerous underwater sinkhole. The site, located off the Sinai Peninsula, is renowned for its breathtaking beauty and challenging underwater features, drawing divers from across the globe. However, it has also earned a reputation as a deadly destination, with over 130 lives lost in recent years. many of them skilled divers. The Blue Hole is notorious for its extreme depths and a natural underwater tunnel known as the Arch. This tunnel begins around 55 meters below the surface and stretches down to 120 meters. Beyond this lies a seemingly endless drop into the ocean's abyss. Diving here requires exceptional preparation and skill as the risks are immense. Despite warnings from seasoned divers, including Tarek Omar, a respected deepwater recovery expert, Yuri decided to take on the challenge alone. He brought along a helmet camera to document the experience, a decision that would make his story widely known. On the day of his dive, Yuri descended into the Blue Hole. Initially, he appeared confident, but as he ventured deeper, things quickly spiraled out of control. The footage from his camera revealed his descent accelerating dangerously, far beyond safe limits for a single air tank. At around 80 meters, Yuri likely began experiencing nitrogen narcosis, a condition caused by the effects of pressure at extreme depths. This condition can impair judgment, cause confusion, and lead to panic. As the footage continued, Yuri's distress became evident. He struggled with his equipment and lost control of his buoyancy. Eventually, he reached a depth of 115 meters, where he became disoriented and removed his regulator, a critical piece of equipment that supplies oxygen. The footage captured Yuri's final moments as he desperately tried to inflate his buoyancy compensator to ascend. Unfortunately, his attempts were unsuccessful, and the video ended abruptly, leaving behind haunting images of a diver in distress. The next morning, Tarek Omar, at the request of Yuri's mother, descended into the Blue Hole to recover his body. Tarek, known for his expertise in recovering the remains of divers from the sinkhole, found Yuri's body at a depth of 92 meters. Alongside it, he retrieved the helmet camera, which had survived the dive despite exceeding its recommended depth limit. The footage from Yuri's camera was later reviewed and shared publicly, offering an unfiltered glimpse into his final moments. It quickly gained widespread attention, becoming one of the most well-known diving incidents ever documented. Millions have since watched the video, and many have been deeply affected by its stark portrayal of the risks associated with deepwater diving. Yuri's tragic fate raises several questions about what led to his untimely death. The combination of nitrogen narcosis, overwhelming depth, and the psychological impact of panic likely played a role. Experts believe that his decision to dive alone, coupled with inadequate preparation for the specific challenges of the Blue Hole, contributed significantly to the outcome. Despite being an experienced diver, the extreme environment of the Blue Hole proved too much. In the years following Yuri's death, the Blue Hole has continued to claim lives, earning the grim nickname Divers' Cemetery. Memorial plaques line the area, left by families mourning their loved ones. While the site's beauty continues to draw divers, its dangers remain ever present. For those like Tarek Omar, who has recovered more than 20 bodies from the site, the tragedies associated with the Blue Hole are a reminder of the risks involved. Tarek has noted that most accidents stem from human error or overconfidence, rather than any supernatural cause. Yuri Lipsky's story remains one of the most chilling and widely remembered incidents in diving history. His death is a cautionary tale about the importance of preparation, respect for nature's power, and the risks of pushing beyond personal limits. The appeal of the Blue Hole persists, but Yuri's tragic final dive reminds us that even the most skilled individuals are not immune to the ocean's dangers. It was October 5, 2003, when Timothy Treadwell and his girlfriend, Amy Huguenard, spent their final days in Alaska's Katmai National Park. For 13 years, Treadwell had dedicated his summers to living among grizzly bears, believing he had developed a bond with them. Known as the Grizzly Man, he aimed to protect and educate others about these animals. However, his approach, which involved close contact with bears, was seen as reckless by wildlife experts. Treadwell's passion often led him to camp in risky areas, like the Grizzly Maze, a dense habitat with high bear activity. He felt confident that the bears, whom he treated like friends, would not harm him. Despite repeated warnings from park rangers about the dangers, Treadwell persisted in his ways, believing trust and familiarity would keep him safe. That October, Treadwell extended his stay later than usual to track a specific female bear. As winter approached, bears in the area became more aggressive while preparing for hibernation. On October 5th, Treadwell and Huguenard made a routine satellite phone call to a colleague in Malibu. They were waiting for their air taxi scheduled for the following day. Everything seemed normal. When pilot Willie Fulton arrived on October 6th, he sensed something was wrong. Unable to contact Treadwell, he ventured to the campsite and found a bear lingering near the tents. As he looked around, he spotted human remains partially buried. Alarmed, Fulton contacted the National Park Service. When the rangers arrived, the grim reality became clear. They found Treadwell's remains scattered, with identifiable parts such as his arm still wearing a wristwatch. Nearby, Huguenard's remains were found partially buried, indicating she had been dragged from the tent. The bear responsible for the attack was still in the area and displayed defensive behavior. Rangers were forced to euthanize the bear to recover the remains. A necropsy revealed it had consumed parts of Treadwell and Huguenard. A younger bear in the vicinity was also euthanized after charging at rangers, though its involvement in the incident was uncertain. Among the recovered belongings was a video camera that had captured audio of the attack. Though the lens cap was on, the recording provided a chilling account of their final moments. Treadwell's frantic voice can be heard shouting for help, while Huguenard, panicked, pleaded with him to play dead. When that failed, she tried to intervene, but the bear dragged Treadwell away. Huguenard's screams followed before the recording ended after 6 agonizing minutes. Authorities chose not to release the audio publicly, describing it as deeply disturbing. Further investigation revealed that the bear was a 28-year-old male weighing nearly 1,000 pounds. Its stomach contained clothing and remains from both victims. The attack marked the first bear-related fatalities in the park's 85-year history. Treadwell's life and actions remain controversial. While some believe he genuinely wanted to protect the bears, others argue his behavior, driven by a mix of passion and recklessness, put both himself and the bears at risk. His choice to camp in the grizzly maze during a dangerous time of year and his close interactions with the animals disregarded warnings from wildlife experts. Huguenard's role in the tragedy is equally tragic. Although she reportedly feared the bears, she joined Treadwell in Alaska. She had planned to leave him after returning to California, but her life was tragically cut short during the attack. Her attempts to save Treadwell during the ordeal showed incredible courage, but proved futile against the strength of the bear. This tragedy raises many what-ifs. Could the outcome have been different if Treadwell had heeded expert warnings? What if he had left the area when he noticed the bears becoming more aggressive? And what if Huguenard had chosen not to join him in Alaska? These unanswered questions linger, adding to the tragedy of their deaths. Ultimately, Timothy Treadwell's story highlights the dangers of underestimating wild animals. While his intentions may have been noble, his disregard for the bear's natural behavior and the risks involved ultimately led to this devastating outcome. It was January 25, 2014 in Michoacán, Mexico. Harry DeVert, a 33-year-old stock trader from Pelham, New York, was pursuing a dream he had long planned. After leaving his stable career in finance, Harry spent 5 years traveling the world, sharing his adventures on his blog, A New Yorker Travels. His latest goal was to ride his motorcycle across the Americas, ultimately reaching Brazil for the World Cup, and then continuing to Ushuaia, the southernmost tip of South America. That day, Harry checked out of a bed and breakfast in Michoacán, a region controlled by the Knights Templar cartel, a criminal group notorious for its influence and violence. Harry messaged his girlfriend Sarah Ashley Shear, sharing that he had been escorted out of a dangerous area by the military and was heading to Zihuatanejo, a coastal town featured in The Shawshank Redemption. Harry intended to visit its beaches, but that was the last anyone heard from him. When Harry stopped communicating, his family grew increasingly worried. His mother, Ann Devert, and close friends launched a relentless search involving both authorities from the United States and Mexico. They scoured dangerous regions hoping for any sign of him. Harry had been consistent with updates throughout his travels, which made his sudden disappearance even more alarming. After 6 months of searching, the devastating truth emerged. On July 18, 2014, Harry's remains were found along with his green Kawasaki motorcycle near Lamajahua Beach, about 16 miles from Zihuatanejo. His body was decomposed and the discovery left his loved ones heartbroken. Deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA testing confirmed his identity. Investigators also found a bag nearby containing drugs which later became crucial in understanding the tragedy. Initially, Harry's death remained a mystery. Some speculated it could have been a robbery, while others feared a more sinister explanation. Answers finally arrived when Mexican authorities arrested Adrian Reyes Cadena, also known as El Tigre. He led a gang operating in the region and was involved in various criminal activities. Officials revealed that the gang had mistaken Harry for a United States agent due to his appearance as a foreigner traveling alone in cartel territory. His motorcycle and electronics likely reinforced their suspicions. This misunderstanding tragically cost Harry his life. Harry's mother, Anne, had suspected that criminal elements were behind his death and believed he had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. While Reyes Cadena's arrest brought some clarity, Anne believed others were involved in the crime. She described the case as just the tip of the iceberg, suggesting a deeper web of connections. Reyes Cadena had a history of violence, including alleged involvement in the kidnapping of police officers and an Italian businessman. His gang, the Guerrero Guard, was infamous for controlling parts of Michoacán with fear and brutality. Additionally, Mariano Sierra Santana, another cartel leader tied to the Knights Templar, was arrested during a related operation in Zihuatanejo. Authorities seized weapons from the group, marking progress in their efforts to curb cartel influence. Despite these arrests, Harry's tragic death leaves lingering questions. What if he had chosen a different route? Could his journey have ended differently? His adventurous spirit had taken him to incredible places, but it ultimately brought him into the path of individuals who saw him as a threat rather than an innocent traveler. Harry's death stemmed from a terrible mistake. To his family and friends, he was a man who embraced life fully, valuing experiences over material possessions. His journey wasn't just about travel, it was about living with passion and curiosity. He had written about being inspired by a sailor who once told him that trying, even without success, mattered more than anything else. Harry carried that philosophy with him, making the world his playground. His passing was not just a loss for his loved ones, but a tragedy rooted in violence and misunderstanding. His story is one of adventure cut short, leaving behind memories of a life lived with boldness and heart. Through his travels and writings, Harry's legacy endures, reminding those who knew him of the incredible person he was and the risks he was willing to take in pursuit of his dreams. In May 1996, Mount Everest became the site of one of the most tragic events in mountaineering history. Tsewang Paljor, a 28-year-old Indian climber, was part of an Indo-Tibetan Border Police or ITBP team attempting to summit the world's highest peak. His journey, intertwined with Everest's unforgiving conditions, led to the creation of one of the mountain's most haunting legends, the story of Green Boots. Paljor was no stranger to the mountains. Born in 1968 in Sakti, a remote village in Ladakh, India, he grew up surrounded by the rugged terrain of the Himalayas. His passion for climbing eventually led him to join the ITBP, combining his love for the mountains with a career serving his country. The ITBP team had a demanding mission, patrolling the challenging India-China border. In 1996, Paljor and 5 ITBP teammates set out to climb Everest via the Northeast Ridge, a route on the Tibetan side of the mountain that had never been completed by an Indian team. Led by Commandant Mohinder Singh, the group knew they faced formidable challenges, but they were determined to make history. On May 10th, Paljor and 2 teammates, Tsewang Smanla and Dorje Morup, pushed toward the summit despite deteriorating weather, while 3 others turned back. A severe blizzard hit, bringing fierce winds and poor visibility. At around 3:45 p.m., the trio radioed their leader, claiming they had reached the summit. However, it is now believed they were roughly 430 feet short of the actual peak. As the storm worsened, the 3 climbers were separated on their descent. The last known contact with them was near a section of the climb called the second step. at an altitude of 28,117 feet. Their teammates later saw faint headlamps in the distance, but none of the climbers returned to camp. The storm had claimed their lives. Paljor's body was later found by other climbers in a sheltered alcove at 27,890 feet, just below the second step. His bright green Koflak mountaineering boots became an unmistakable feature, and the site where he lay became known as Green Boots Cave. Over time, his body became a well-known marker for climbers ascending the northeast ridge. The identity of Green Boots has been debated. Most experts agree it is Tsewang Paljor, but some, including ITBP Senior Deputy Leader P.M. Das, suggest it could be Dorje Morup, who also perished nearby. Conflicting reports from the expedition add to the uncertainty, with some witnesses describing Morup as being in worse condition before the climbers were separated. The legend of Green Boots grew further in 2006, when British climber David Sharp tragically passed away in the same alcove. Sharp, who was climbing alone, succumbed to extreme conditions while resting there. Reports suggest that nearly 40 climbers passed by him during his final hours, mistaking him for the body of Green Boots or assuming he had already passed. Sharp's death drew attention to the ethical dilemmas faced by climbers on Everest. Green Boots became a symbol of the risks of Everest. The mountain is home to over 280 bodies. Many left where they fell due to the extreme difficulty and cost of recovery. Some, like Green Boots, became landmarks for climbers navigating their ascent. In 2014, reports surfaced that Green Boots was no longer visible. Rumors suggested that the China-Tibet Mountaineering Association had moved or covered the body out of respect, though others believe it was simply hidden by rocks or relocated to a less prominent spot. Despite the questions surrounding the true identity of Green Boots, his story serves as a reflection of the harsh realities of Everest. Paljor was just 28, an experienced climber with a promising future. He wasn't a thrill-seeker, but a dedicated professional who had scaled some of the world's toughest peaks in service of his country. His journey, like so many others, ended tragically on the unforgiving slopes of the world's tallest mountain. Today, climbers who pass Green Boots Cave are faced with the reminder of Everest's dangers. Some reflect on the risks and reconsider their own decisions, while others push on, driven by the dream of reaching the summit. For many, it's a somber pause on a path fraught with challenges. Questions remain about the fate of Paljor and his team. Could their lives have been spared if they had turned back earlier? What if conditions on Everest were safer, or if more climbers had stepped in to help those in distress? Green Boots, whether seen or hidden, is a lasting example of the risks involved in chasing the ultimate mountaineering dream. Everest is a place where ambition meets the limits of human endurance, and for some, it becomes their final resting place.